Thank you for coming tonight. We're about to get started. This is our 10th anniversary weekend here at the new Dreamland as a nonprofit, and I just want to, yes. So please come tomorrow if you can. We have a free screening with free popcorn for One Crazy Summer, which is one of the only movies actually filmed on Nantucket. So, I want to introduce our executive director, Alicia Carney, and she'll introduce tonight's program. Thank you so much for coming.
Paul? Oh, we're good. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. It's so great to see such a full house tonight. Thank you so much for being here. So as Josh said, my name is Alicia Carney. I'm the executive director of the Dreamland, but I've been a member of this team for the last 5 years and absolutely love what we do and how many people we get to meet on a daily basis with all the different programming that we do. So I just wanted to start by saying thank you so much to our board who turned up this evening and came out to join us for the reception in the Harbor View room. I'd also like to say thank you so much to our members who continuously support us during all of our events. And of course, those who are guests this evening and possibly joining us for the first time. You're in for a really special program. As Josh mentioned, this is our 10-year anniversary weekend. So 10 years ago tomorrow, the Dreamland reopened with a screening of Jaws as Nantucket's nonprofit film and cultural center. So that's a really exciting time for this organization. We're so proud of how we've evolved over the years from showing film to live events, programming, growing our Dreamland stage company, and there's so many fun things happening this summer. I hope you've all seen a lot of our marketing that's out there. We also have left flyers for everybody, which I'm holding in my hand. I will share with some of you, so please take this with you on your way out, just so you see the extensive list of programming, and we hope to see you at a future event. Most importantly, on July 9th, we are hosting our annual fundraiser, the Dream Big, and actually that is what I'm holding in my hand here. So this is an incredibly important event to the organization, and this is how we are able to sustain our operation year-round. This is how we keep our doors open to the community with all different varieties of programming. So we hope that you'll support us and join us that evening. The theme is vintage theater. It's circus, it's performance. There's so many surprises you're in for, so please, please don't miss that. Don't miss that. I also wanted to share with you this document here. So this is our Dreamland Stage Company upcoming programs. We have Madagascar Junior, we have Into the Woods, we have Working, which is a teen production, incredible productions by Laura Gallagher-Byrne and Sassy Nash. And I think there's a lot for everybody in terms of family and children. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Bonnie Levison. She is the co-founder of the Nantucket Comedy Festival and a storytelling coach from the Moth on NPR, and she has single-handedly helped us get this program off the ground over the years. Bonnie?
Oh, that's my team back there. Sorry, we're going to get this microphone up here correctly. All right. Hi, everybody. Are we the only people on the island that are not invited to a wedding? I just want to know. It's kind of pathetic, isn't it? We're just not popular. Can you hear me? I just want to make sure this sound is okay. Welcome to, I don't even know what installment this is of Dreamland Storytelling. By raising your hands, who is here for the first time? So we have a few of you. Oh, wow. Well, welcome. And by round of applause, who's been here before? Yeah. So they know what they're in for. I mean, people, we don't know what's going to happen. It could be sex, drugs, rock and roll. I hope you have your seatbelt on because you just don't know what's going to happen. Dreamland Storytelling. Tonight you are going to hear from 5 absolutely wonderful people who I have had the great pleasure to get to know through this process. And they are going to share a true story from their life. They were challenged to start because in honor of this incredible place and this incredible building that we are in, and on the 10th anniversary of the new Dreamland and Arts Center, to use the theme of dream. and to whatever that means to you. And it can mean many things to many people. But to come up with, maybe that's the seed of a story. And so they all sort of came up with a story from their lives that somehow was inspired by this theme of dream. And I thought, I looked up dream today, of course, we Google things, and I found a poem. If you'll indulge me, I'd love to read it to you just to get us in the mood. Okay, the blind man dreams that he can see, the mute that he can talk. The deaf man dreams that he can hear, the lame that he can walk. The young man dreams of what's to come in years that lie ahead. The old man dreams of yesterday and longs for youth instead. Most things we have in life are worth a lot more than they seem. What is reality for me could be your wildest dream. We wish that we were someone else or in some other spot. We fail to treasure what is ours, not seeing what we've got. At times I wish that I were you. You might wish that you were me. What are those certain traits we have that makes an entity? We wish for what's beyond our reach, sometimes beyond the earth. That which is easy to obtain seldom has any worth. If we never followed a dream or wished upon a star, we'd miss out on the chance to be much better than we are. So always keep those dreams alive. Don't let them fade away. It's possible one of your dreams may come true on this day. So I love that. And thank you. I was thinking of dreams, and think of all the songs that were with the theme of dream. Dreams by Fleetwood Mac. I just looked at these. Dream On by Aerosmith. Sweet Dreams by the Eurythmics. Daydream Believer by the Monkees. Come on, how great was that? California Dreamin', the Mamas and the Papas. The River of Dreams by Billy Joel. And Get Out of My Dreams and Get Into My Car by Billy Ocean. I mean, come on, some of the great, great things were about dreams. But anyway, you're going to hear some stories just inspired by this idea. And I just have to talk about this incredible building we're in. I know we have some board members, we have supporters, and what a gift this place is to this island. And I just learned today that, over 100 years ago, I think it was the Straw Works bonnet factory. I did not know that. It has been a roller rink. I totally think we should bring that back. I don't know, Alicia, are you here? Roller rink? Love it. And it was, at one point, over as is Nantucket. Evidently, this structure, I mean the original structure, now it's been obviously transformed, was over at Brant Point, and they floated it over here. Because why would you drive it when you're on Nantucket and you could float it? It's just how we roll here on this island, for anybody who's new here. I love that. And I want to thank you, because I love to have this event be a participatory event. And as many of you know, we went to you ahead of time and asked you to answer a question, which was, tell us about a memorable theater experience. Because this theater is magic. This theater has been magic for this community, and it's not just in the summer when a lot of us are here, but it's all year long. And so I really, just as you hear these stories and think about this space, I hope you'll all appreciate this incredible building and this space where so much magic happens. And so I did ask the audience, and I will be using your answers anonymously, unless you feel like leaping to your feet and taking credit. You never know. And just to give you an idea of some of the people, one of the things I just love about storytelling is that everyone has a story. We know that. Everyone has a story. And we see this person, and when you hear and you listen to them, and you ask them questions, you find out that they have lived a life maybe you had no idea about. And one of the great honors of, I teach storytelling, and I've been doing it for about 12 years now, and it's such an honor, and I am endlessly amazed at the people that I get to meet. And I have to admit, sometimes I look at them and I think, I know who they are. You never do. When you hear their story, you get to know someone, and it just connects us all. And I think you'll have that experience tonight. I hope so. Let me just read a couple of the audience participatory responses. Let's see what we've Okay, a memorable theater experience. When I was younger, and I waited in line for 2 hours to watch E.T. and ate a peanut butter jelly sandwich outside. That was the most amazing movie. Of course you remember that. My first concert was John Denver in New York City at Madison Square Garden. Oh my God, I thought I was so cool to this day. 50 years later, thank you for the number. It's so sad that he's gone. I think of my first time in a theater, and just every time I hear John Denver to this day, I think that is part of that theater experience, right? It gets in your soul, music, theater. Here's one more. In second grade, our play was Rip Van Winkle, a big theater experience for a second grader. I was homesick on that day, the day of auditions, so I was cast as we all covet this role, the offstage scream. But this person did get a credit in the playbill, and the rest is history. We'll be listening for that scream tonight. And I was thinking about this building and dreams, and I think she mentioned I was involved with starting the Nantucket Comedy Festival. And I just wanted to share with you a little bit about that dream for me. It was 2007, and I was trying my hand at stand-up comedy, and a wonderful comedian in town, Kevin Flynn, had a show at the theater workshop, sort of once a month, and I'd go on the show. And as for those Nantucketers, even back in 2007, I kept saying there's a yoga festival, there's a book festival, there's an armchair festival, there's a nail festival. There is a festival for everything. Why not a comedy festival? And I really wanted to have I just thought it'd be great to bring great comedians here, more than just these sort of little shows. So I went to Kevin, I'm like, what do you think of this? And we're like, okay, let's go. So we spent this crazy year, and I dug into my savings, I financed it. It was one of the scariest things I've ever done. And I remember I would sit on Main Street and try to sell tickets, and I'd beg people walking by. And it was amazing, and I just kept thinking, this is a disaster. It's going to fail miserably. And we had put up a tent at Jetty's Beach. We had 4 days of shows. We had a large tent at Jetty's Beach. But before, this is 2000, so it happened in 2008, before this became an arts theater. So right behind all of you, in what was the parking lot back there, the Dreamland gave us their parking lot. And we tented over the parking lot. And I remember just so nervously, we had our first night, and I kept thinking, my God, no one is going to show. It's going to be such a disaster. But we're on Nantucket Island. And I think for those of you who've done anything on this island, people show. And I remember standing in the back of this empty tent, and there was a wonderful comedian for our opening night. If you've ever heard of him, Mike Birbiglia. Hilarious. And I stood in the back of the tent, my heart beating, and just so scared. And I saw people, it was like they just came out of the woodwork with smiles on their faces, and so excited and so supportive. And as the sun set behind us back there, and the water shining, and the moon was aglow, and the stars were out, and people were falling off their chairs with laughter, I thought, you know what? It's going to be okay. This is amazing. And it was such an example of the Dreamland supporting people who had a dream. And an example of, in this case as well, build it and they will come. And that is so true on this island. And we support each other, and I know all of you have supported this beautiful place, but this is a moment where I can say thank you to the Dreamland for all those years ago making my dream come true. So I want to thank them for that. So thank you for listening to that. I'm going to introduce each of your storytellers by way of a question. And the question I'm asking them is basically, if you can think back, what was your first vivid memory of Nantucket? And if I were asked that, I'm asking myself that, and what immediately came to my mind was probably being about 6 years old. I've been coming all my life, and on this little side porch in this old cottage, and standing outside and looking up at the sky, and seeing so many stars. They felt like they were right there. I know you've had this experience if you've seen it at night, and I kept grabbing for them, and I felt like I could just take handfuls of stars, and it was one of the most magical images I think I ever felt, and that is Nantucket to me. So that was my memory, and I've asked each of them that question. So I know you guys will be very supportive of our first storyteller because she's our first, and it's kind of scary to come out. So when I asked her what was her first sort of memory, she recalled being in her early 20s. She was staying, it was the last weekend of the hostel, and it was Columbus Day weekend, and she was biking with a friend, and they kept saying, "We smell grapes. We just smell grapes." I'm thinking when she's saying this, you mean cranberries? You mean Portuguese bread? I don't know what you mean. And she goes, "No, it was grape jelly. We finally figured it out, it was grape jelly." But just that smell of grapes. So please welcome Janet Forrest.
In 2015, I was sitting in my apartment in Queens watching my favorite TV show at the time, Criminal Minds. If you've never seen the show before, every episode begins and ends with a quote. At the end of this particular episode, one of the characters had realized she could not be an FBI agent anymore, and she turned in her badge and her gun. And in the last shot, she's walking away, and she looks back at the camera, and the voiceover comes in and says, "We must be willing to let go of the life we planned so we can have the life that's waiting for us. Joseph Campbell." And it faded to black, and the credits rolled, and I just started sobbing. 5 months before this, I had moved from Nantucket to New York with a boyfriend. He didn't want to spend another winter on Nantucket, and I was totally burnt out from 4 years of pet sitting. So with no plan and no job and no friends, we took this leap of faith. And I was excited because I was excited to get out of my comfort zone, and I thought it would be good for us to have a fresh start, and I was ready. So we settled into our apartment, and I didn't know what I wanted to do for work. I had done a lot of things, so I just took the first thing that came along, which was general admin work at this boutique firm whose business was commercial real estate, but their passion was toxic masculinity. And having just come from a place that really respects and reveres and just normalizes women leadership, this was very shocking, really shocking, and so stressful that I just constantly sweated all the time. And I didn't even, at the end of the day, have the comfort of going home because as the months went on, I realized my relationship wasn't working. And it was no one's fault. He's a good person, I'm a good person. We weren't a good fit, and we both knew it, but we didn't want to say it. And I definitely didn't want to say it because I had put every single one of my eggs in this basket. I had sold my business, I had given up my housing, I had said goodbye to my friends, and there was just my pride. I had never in my life before this had not had something not work out. I always was able to adapt and be flexible and maneuver, and I was going to figure this out. So when I heard that quote from Joseph Campbell, it showed me a truth that I was trying so hard not to see. And it presented me with a choice. Am I going to accept reality, or am I going to live in denial? And I wrestled with this for a little while, and then the universe did something really funny. It offered me the gift of avoidance. My boyfriend and I simultaneously but separately were offered seasonal work back on Nantucket. So instead of taking a hard look in the mirror, we packed up a few things, closed up our apartment for the summer, and moved back to Nantucket where we promptly broke up. So the season started on a sour note, but it was a great summer because I had free housing, I was paid a lot of money, I got to be with my friends, and I had 4 magical months to forget about all the reasons why New York did not work the first time and make up a whole long list of reasons why it was absolutely going to work the second time. So that fall, I went back to New York, and I was single, and I had money in my pocket, and I knew what I wanted to do because I had done some soul searching, and I realized across my career, even though I'd worn a number of hats, the thread that ran through it is I was always the person in the center of chaos going, what's the goal, people? What are we trying to accomplish? So I decided I was going to take the money I had from selling my business and invest in a life coaching certification program. And I was right. As I started the program, I was like, this is what I need to be doing. And I even went back to my crappy real estate job to make ends meet. And I came back to Nantucket to work and save money. And I was going to go back in the fall in 2016 to launch my coaching practice and live my best life in New York City. And that's when things went really downhill. I realized I couldn't pay my rent on my own, so I found a roommate, which she did pay half the rent and cost me a lot in therapy. And launching my coaching practice wasn't going as planned because for all the networking events and business breakfasts and seminars, I could not find a client to save my life. Because if you've lived in New York City, you know whatever you're doing, there's a million other people doing it and better and for less money. And I just couldn't get any traction. And as it went on, my confidence dwindled and my bank account dwindled. And in direct proportion, my desperation and my resentment grew. And it just oozed into every single interaction I had. I remember meeting with this one potential client, very different from an actual client, and I met him for coffee, and I had him meet me in the Pete's Coffee House inside the Capital One Bank in Union Square, because that's a very convenient place to meet people in Manhattan. The actual reason was, as a card-carrying Capital One member, I got 50% off at the coffee shop. And for an hour, I sat listening to this well-dressed, perfectly coiffed man tell me how he's leaving his lucrative job in finance because money just wasn't that important to him. And I remember thinking as I sipped my discount Earl Grey tea, that sounds like something only someone with a lot of money would say. He didn't hire me. As the winter went on and the summer was getting closer, my resolve was waning and things weren't working. And for a lack of alternatives, I thought, I'll just go back to Nantucket. So for those of you keeping count, for the third time, I packed up a few clothes, my laptop, and my steam trunk full of denial, and I went back to Nantucket for another summer. And at some point in August, I was at my friend Shelley's house. We were sitting at our dining room table, and I was telling her about how things just weren't working in New York, and I didn't know what to do. And she said very simply, without judgment, which is very hard for her, she said, you can move back to Nantucket. And I broke down in tears because she was showing me something I did not want to see. And I had this choice, do I accept reality or do I live in denial? And I couldn't do it anymore. Finally, reluctantly, I was willing to give up the life I planned in New York to accept whatever life might be waiting for me back on Nantucket. So I moved back. Some close friends were looking for a roommate, so I had a place to live. And you can always find work on Nantucket if you have housing. And I came back, and I felt, at least I'm safe, at least I can recover. But I felt so ashamed of myself. And so disappointed. And I had credit card debt, which I had never had, and I borrowed money from my parents, which was just so hard for me. And I think the hardest part was I just really thought everyone else was thinking the same thing. Like, what was she thinking? I mean, that was just so silly. She wasted 3 years, and now she's so much worse off than she started. She has to completely start over. And then I kept having these odd encounters. I was sitting at corner table, and these two women who run a nonprofit were sitting next to me, and they said, oh, you're back? We heard you're back. Do you want to do your benefit walk again? And then shortly after I started working at the library, a group of women were leaving one of the programs, and one of them, who I don't know that well, stopped and said, Janet Forrest, good to have you back. Kept walking. And then I got a call one day from someone who I used to work for, who I hadn't heard from in years. And they said, hey, I think I saw you walking down the sidewalk in front of the Dreamland. Are you back? Did you move back? Do you need work? And I gotta tell you, I walked hundreds of miles of sidewalks in New York City, and not a single person offered me a job, not once. And it dawned on me that no one cared that New York didn't work out. No one cared that I was broke. No one cared why I went or why I came back. Everyone was just happy to have me back home. And it took about 2.5 years. I paid back my parents. I got back on my feet. And I got to start doing things I love again. And one of those things was theater. And in one of the plays I was in, I connected with Andrew, and we started dating. And last October, we got married. And for the first time in 4 years, I just felt a sense of stability. 2 months ago, we got a phone call that every tenant on Nantucket knows to expect. We need to be out of our housing by the end of the year. And it brought me back to that moment in my apartment in Queens where I was faced with something I wasn't quite ready to hear, and I was given a choice. Do I accept reality or do I live in denial? And we've gotten some great offers for housing, but none of it brings us closer to home ownership. None of it gives us the security that we really want. And if we stay, we would just be doing what I did in New York for 3 years, grasping at something that's just not realistic for us. And while it feels like I'm presented with the same choice, I'm not the same person I was. I'm not alone. I have an amazing partner. And I'm not someone that wants to live in denial. I'm someone who's willing to give up the life I planned so we can have the life that's waiting for us. Thank you.
Janet Forrest. I always say this job should come with tissues. Whether it's, I cry many tears of heartbreak and also tears of joy and laughter. So thank you, Janet. That was beautiful. For those of you who've been to storytelling nights, I often say this, and one of the most important things in a story is to not tell a story about, you need transformation. So you can't tell a story that I was great, this great thing happened, and I'm still great, because we don't really care that much. But when you allow yourself to be vulnerable and can say that something was a struggle for me and something was hard, and maybe I overcame it or maybe I didn't, now we have a story. And now we all lean in. And I think Janet gave that to us. Yeah. Okay, now Janet, I didn't get your bio, but I know, unfortunately she's leaving us, but I know you're not leaving us forever because you're coming back to the island, right? Because this is your family. You're going to come back to visit. Yes. But you work at the library right now, and when you see her on the street, you're going to say, give her a big warm welcome, right? The corner table, all those places. Thank you. Okay, tell us about a memorable theater experience playing Sister Aloysius in John Patrick Shanley's Doubt at TWN. All the theater on this island really is amazing, isn't it? Here's another one. When my sister took me to the rated R movie on my 17th birthday, the person at the ticket counter didn't believe my age. Unfortunately, I'd forgotten my driver's license, and they did not let me in. That is a bummer. So she probably took you for a drink, right, instead? And here's another. When I was 5, I went to my first ballet, seeing Maria throw her ballet shoes across the stage, defeating the Mouse King. I knew I wanted to dance and perform. What a moment that is, right? The Mouse King, I love that. And here's just 2 quick ones. A memorable theater experience, back row when I was 13. We're just going to leave it at that. I think we know. And the other one is for anybody who's ever been to the Sconset Casino to a movie, the bubble gum under the seats at the casino. Yeah. That was also a warning. That's a public service announcement for anybody. We like to do many things here. Okay, you ready for your next storyteller? Our next storyteller, when asked what was one of your earliest memories of Nantucket, it was actually on the ferry as a young girl. In those days, I don't know how many of you remember coming from Woods Hole, and then the ferry stopped at Martha's Vineyard. You know that place, the Vineyard? You know that place. But in those days, she said, people would, as the boat was coming in, and there were the big piles, where the boats dock, there were boys standing on the piles, and if you threw a quarter over, they would dive in. That is insane. Please welcome Nancy Newhouse.
Okay, thank you. In 1946, my parents moved to Bel Air, Texas. My father had seen that there was an opportunity there for business that he wanted to pursue, and my mother agreed to go. They both were New Yorkers and had always summered on Nantucket growing up. So my mother made the condition that she would go to Texas, which she was appalled by the idea of living there. But she agreed to go if my father would allow her and help her get to Nantucket for the summer for June, July, and August. So he agreed. So there we were in Bel Air, Texas. In 1952, Ruby Lucky, a black woman, came to work with us. She was like a member of our family. I was 6, my brother Jerry was 4, Debbie was 2, and Chris was 4 months. So she and Mother had their hands full, that's for sure. And Ruby was just like one of the family. I remember we didn't have a TV. And so Ruby would bring her little portable TV. And if I knew she was bringing the TV, I would pretend I was sick so that I could stay home and watch Queen for a day while she ironed. So, and Ruby also brought her children to play sometimes with us if her mother Ness wasn't able to take care of the kids, her children. So that we got to know her kids and played with them, and we sort of thought of ourselves as one big family. Ruby's oldest daughter, Brenda, told me a few days ago that she always thought she and my brother Jerry were twins because their birthdays were both on August 1st. We had different experiences in Texas. I remember 1956 was a big year. I was 10 years old, and Jerry and I took the bus downtown, public transportation. My mother got us on the bus, and my father was picking us up at the end. And as soon as we got on, we paid the quarters or whatever it was and ran to the back of the bus, and we were so excited because anyone knows you get the best bounce at the back of the bus. And so we sat there and we're getting ready. And the bus driver came back and he said, "Y'all get up front right now. You can't sit back here." So we were kind of miffed, but we did what we were told. And so that was an odd experience, we thought, but so we made it downtown. But the summer of 1956, at the end of the month, we had our last day of school. Mother would pick us up in the big Vic Buick station wagon, 1953. The bicycles were piled on the top of the car, and the suitcases, and everything was arranged and inside the car. And Mother had a little Samsonite, I don't know what they called those things, beauty cases or something, and it would go in the front seat in between Mom and Dad, or the driver and whoever it was. And then one of the littlest kids got to sit on it, which I was never that little kid, unfortunately, but Anyway, so Mom would pick us all up at school. We'd climb in. We'd go to the doctor's office to get our polio vaccines. We had to. We were captive audiences. And then we'd pick up my father. Then we'd drive to Ruby's home. And we'd pick Ruby up, and she came with us. So it was quite a carload, plus I need to remember our mutt Jigger, who was the size of a lab. So we're all in this car, and we take off. And we get to Louisiana, and we go all pile out and go into this restaurant, nothing very fancy. It was one-lane highways each way. There were no highways yet. And so we went in for lunch, and the woman came, and she saw Ruby, and she said, "Y'all ain't eating here. She's gotta eat outside or in the kitchen." And my father said, "Well, we're not eating here. If she can't eat here, we can't eat here." So we all piled back in the car and stopped at a 7-Eleven or some little market and got peanut butter and jelly and bread, and there we went. So the car must have been a mess. Anyway, so, and then that night, we tried to stop at a motel. Same thing happened. She can't stay here. She's going to have to sleep in the car. And my father said the same thing. If she can't come in, we can't come in. So we all piled back in the car. And that was the beginning of my parents driving 48 hours from Bel Air, Texas, to New York, New Rochelle, to see my grandparents, my mother's parents. So we all got to know each other real well. But those experiences were strange to us, but nobody really talked about it. But things were sort of siphoning into our minds. In 2004, I went back to Bel Air, and I interviewed Ruby. I asked her, I was asked to write an article for The Independent for Martin Luther King, and I thought, that's what I want to do. And I had a couple of reasons, but anyway, I had my little tape recorder, and Ruby came to the house, the same house where I grew up. Our brother Chris, the youngest, still lives there. So when I go home, I really go home. So we started the interview, and I said, "Ruby, do you ever think about our trips to Nantucket?" And Ruby said, Ruby was 76 at the time, by the way, in 2004. Ruby said, "Oh, I think about those trips a lot, Nancy. You know, there was one time in Alabama when we saw a van pulled over to the side of the road, and there were 3 white men, and they were taking a black man out, and he was all tied up. And she said, and we don't know what happened, but she said, your father slowed down to try to let them know they were being seen, but it didn't matter one bit. There was a deep slope on the side, and they dragged that man down, and we never know what happened, but they probably killed him." And I started crying, and I said, "Ruby, I remember that. I never, ever, nobody ever talked about it, and I always wondered, maybe I just imagined that." And she said, "Oh no, it was real." She said, "They probably killed him." And I said, "But Ruby, I'm so angry. Why didn't Dad stop? Why didn't we do something to help that poor man? It's terrible. I've always wondered that." And she said, "Nancy, your father couldn't have done anything. He was outnumbered. He slowed down and tried to let them know someone was looking, but there was nothing that your father could have done. And if they had seen me in the car, it would have been all over for all of us." And she said, "Those killings happen, and they still happen today. Not as much, but they still happen." And she said, "You know, I've never had anything against the whites. We're all the same. We all have the same innards, and the same God made us all." And so we hugged, and I was crying, and she was crying, and it was just, you know, it was such a relief on one hand, and on the other, the fact that we couldn't do anything, and that this is all still going on is so upsetting to me. But the fact that Ruby told her story was her gift to me. Everyone has a story, and I was so glad that she shared that with me that day. Thank you.
Nancy Newhouse. Wow, just amazing. You can I don't know, for those of you, many of you may already know Nancy, but she has actually published 2 books of oral histories of all people from this island, right? All people from this island, which is, one is called Voices of the Village, which is about Sconset. And I'm happy to say my father and uncle are actually in it, which is kind of really cool. It was so fun to meet her this way. And We Are Nantucket. And you authored Affordable Nantucket, A History of the Hospital Thrift Shop. So where do you get the good deals? What time of day do you get in there? I love that. And she's just done so many cool things here. She's interviewed more than 80 people whose interviews can be found in the archives of the NHA online. And you also worked, which you didn't write down, but I'd like to share, she worked with, was it middle school students? Was this last year? Or 3 times. But anyway, she worked with 7th graders and had them, help them perform interviews of the elderly on this island. Different people all over the island. What a great experience to be in 7th grade and actually interviewing people. Just wonderful. Thank you, Nancy. Very moving story. All right. Okay, a memorable theater experience. 8 of us went to see American Utopia in December of 2021. David Byrne, it was David Byrne announcing, quote, "The health department has just announced that it is legal to dance in your seat." Just so great. As you may have heard, I teach for the Moth, which is an organization out of New York, and we just had our gala benefit about a week ago, and we honored David Byrne. And he spoke, and he was just incredible. And that is a great show, by the way. You got to go see that. My twin sister's roommate at college, her uncle was the producer of West Side Story, the original one, Robert E. Griffith. And so they got to go as young people and sit in those princess seats up on the side and see the original version of West Side Story in the orchestra. It was thrilling, and the play was obviously wonderful. Love that. A memorable experience, my earliest ever movie experience was seeing Batman Bambi. How did I get from Bambi to Bambi at Radio City, in Radio City, a movie in Radio City, in New York City at least 67 years ago. It was magical, and I have loved theater and film ever since. Wow. Love these. Thank you all so much. We'll do one more. And I know why I thought of Batman, because of this next one. When a bat came flying down on stage during a scene in the musical I was in at school. Oh my God, that's terrifying. Wow. I love that, I think. I don't know. Okay, our next storyteller coming to the stage, when asked, a memorable a memory of Nantucket, early memory. Now this is early. She was 3 years old. She found a quarter. And she decided to walk out, and she said, "Bye, I'm going shopping." In Nantucket, I think she said she lived on Farmer Street, and she walked into town at 3 years old to Robinson's Five and Dime on Main Street. Oh, the good old days. Please welcome Annie Bissinger.
Good evening. My name is Annie Bissinger. I'm a title examiner. And I would love to tell you that I have fabulous and magical dreams. I'd even love to tell you that I've had dreams where I've been chased, naked, late. But sadly, I can't remember them if I've had them. But what I have dreamed about recently is being a title examiner. And I'm telling you, it isn't so interesting to have as a profession, leave alone to dream about it. And pretty much makes me wish that I was sleepless. I'm a full-time mother, and I am the daughter of a full-time working mother, who was the daughter of a full-time working mother. And that woman, my grandmother, was quite an icon on Wall Street. As in the 50s and 60s, she was the only woman to run her own banking firm. In our house, we had very, very little contact with my parents. I can maybe remember 2 times a month when we'd get together. We didn't dine with them, and they never came into that kitchen and asked to share a bowl of Cheerios with us. We never vacationed with them. They commuted up here on weekends, and their idea of an outing was to take us down to the office, where we would practice our typing and where we learned to file. We developed some initiative and independence as a result of this upbringing. But the greatest test was when I was 14 and my brother was 12, and they sent us up here to Nantucket alone for our February vacation. And this was in the 60s, when February wasn't even the February it is today. So here we were on Nantucket with some cash, a charge account at the tap room, the works of James Thurber, a couple of Nichols and May albums, a box of Cheerios, and my brother's coveted Sony radio. Well, it was that radio that saved us, because we discovered that in the evening we were able to tune into a television show, Mr. Ed, a show about a talking horse, for any of you who do not know it. We delighted in that entertainment. Each evening we'd cuddle into our bunk beds and put on Mr. Ed, and it really kept us going. In fact, that radio and Mr. Ed saved a nightmare for a vacation to just a bad vacation. Well, finally I grew up, sort of, and was ready to get out in the world with my independence, initiative, character, and I definitely had a sense of humor by then. My typing and my filing. But I had no direction and I had no dream. And it was very frustrating. I went to work in New York. I worked there for about 10 years. But strangely, that inward bound trip we took in the 60s had made me want to come and live here. So after 10 years, I quit my job, I bought a computer, and I came up here to live. By the time I was 38, I was married, thank God. By the time I was 39, I had my daughter, Sarah Poor. Now, the first 3 months of Sarah's life, I was a boob, she was a lump. I was really ready to let it all go. Until the first day of her 4th month, when she smiled at me. And that smile changed everything. I fell in love, and I was a mommy. However, I didn't have much to go on for this. I so wanted to be better, but I honestly had no idea of how to do it. So I followed on the journey of neglectful parenting. I got people to take care of her in the summer. I enrolled her in full-time, year-round daycare as soon as it was possible. And in her school years, I could not find enough after-school activities and programs for this child to do. We were losing track, and I believe Sarah was developing a small case of ADHD. But finally, when she was 9 or 10, I found Laura Byrne's improv class. And I enrolled her in that class, but it was the first time I asked her if she wanted to do anything. She had no choice up until then. So of course I was met with terrible negativeness about that class. No, I'm not doing that. She went to that class, and I swear to you, the night she came home, she ran down into my office, sat in the chair, twirled around, and said, "Oh, Mommy, that was the best thing ever." And it was so exciting for me because the ADHD was going to go away. And Sarah had found a love and a direction, and she actually had found a dream. She pursued it out here as much as she could. She was in every production she could find, and she did this on her own. And she was pretty good. She, in fact, was good. However, she was also happy and confident and funny. And that was the best thing. And she had this dream. But she wasn't alone. All the kids who were involved in these programs gained so much from them. It was really a beautiful and exciting thing to watch. Parents, too, were really excited. We were thrilled because our kids were kept off the dreaded strip. Sarah pursued acting through college, graduated with a degree in directing, which her father and I were very wary of this, due to the fact that she really was a terrible waitress. We couldn't kill the dream. So we let her go on, and she did a few theater things in California, and has finally pursued a completely different career, but she's had the basis of those skills and that dream to get her where she is today. Now, Sarah Poor is, of course, my dearest living dream. However, it was because of her dream that I got a dream. And my dream was to be an advocate and a supporter of children's theater on Nantucket. And I couldn't be prouder of that dream. And I certainly couldn't be prouder or happier about the Dreamland and their program. And I'm still involved in it, and I still take such delight when I see these kids. And I know it's just doing great things. But I'm still a title examiner. I still dream about title examinations. But when I wake up, I have such a wonderful dream to turn to, and that's the Dreamland. Thank you.
Annie Bissinger. Oh. So this is usually where I tell you what she does, but I think we all know. What does she do? She's a title examiner. Oh, God, Annie. I think Annie can now headline at the Nantucket Comedy Festival. What do you guys think? Hilarious. But Annie, aren't we lucky she is on the board of the Dreamland? And she said she's been involved with supporting so many shows that she now has an incredible collection of Dreamland posters all over her house, which is wonderful. Thank you, Annie. That was just great. Hilarious. Okay, are you guys having a good time? Yeah. Good. Okay, here's one. Tell us about a memorable theater experience. The man sitting next to me tonight and I smooched in the last row in 1956. I was smitten. Ooh la la. Okay, you know, I don't know if he knows. They might be together. We're not sure. We're not sure. Memorable theater experience. Fiddler on the Roof, Livingston Taylor, Il Divo. Completely different. That is a completely different. Oh, here's another one. Il Divo and Week. What is with Il Divo? Il Divo is they are amazing and wicked, fabulous. Tell us about a memorable theater experience. And this person was thinking of Dreamland. This will be my very first theater experience here. Till now, awesome. I guess there's a first Dreamlander. There's a virgin Dreamlander somewhere in this room. Usually we can find you, so just know. Oh, seeing Casbah at Hasty Pudding. That's a fun one. Wow. Oh, gosh. Taking my granddaughter to Lion King, Wicked, and Mamma Mia. I mean, that is the lineup. Therefore, you are a good grandparent. I caught a beer thrown by the lead guitarist for Ozzy Osbourne Band at Ozzy Fest. Let's see. Okay. Oh, Josh Gray, our producer. I'm going to out you. He lived here as a young boy, and he went to his very first movie here at the Dreamland by himself. It was a big deal, and it was, I don't know if you guys remember this one, Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken. And I said, Josh, I don't know. He goes, it was the worst Disney movie ever in the history of Disney. And finally, for this section, I was 9 years old. I went to my first concert right after at USC after the USC beat Utah State in football, and it was the Beach Boys. Now that's a California moment right there, right? Wow. Okay, our next storyteller. Coming to the stage, his first memory of Nantucket was being 15 years old, landing in Nantucket after a stop in Martha's Vineyard in a massive driving rainstorm. Please welcome Chris Farley.
Lefty Lucy. Can I just say, Annie, you are a treasure. Honest to God. It's just such a wonderful thing to hear you. Thank you. never told this story outside of anybody that I don't know before. So in 1965, I was a sophomore at a Catholic high school in Newark, New Jersey, and my dad decided I needed to have a camping experience, and he heard about a caddy camp on the island of Nantucket, and so he arranged for me to come to Nantucket, and I'm the person who arrived in a driving rainstorm after my sophomore year in high school, and I was driven out in this rainstorm to what I thought would be camps have, pools and baseball fields, and so we go down this dirt road, and we come through these scrub oaks, and here's these 4 Quonset huts. And if you know anything about a Quonset hut, they're the Navy things that are corrugated steel, and they have no windows, and they have no electricity. So we pile out of the little station wagon, and I go inside, and I showed my bunk, and where's the bathroom? Well, that's the head, they call it here. And I walk out, and I look into the head, and there's 4 toilet bowls. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no barricades. I've never seen anything like this in my life. I said, this is my parents must have hated me so much as to send me to this place. And so but then the next day came along, and we had team sports. We played softball. I knew how to do that. They taught us how to caddy. I started to get comfortable. I met people from other walks of life, like Saugus and Taunton, Mass, and we got... and they had showed me a whole new way to talk, and darn, we started to make some money. It was really great. So I started to feel more comfortable and more comfortable. Now I was a little guy. I was 5'2", and the big bags, these big kangaroo bags they used to have, sometimes they would have, like Roy Larson had, like 48 balls in his bags, and they had leather straps, and they cracked on your shoulders. But we were together, and we made it through the summer, and I guess I did okay because they had something called the Honor Circle, which was they gave to the people they thought were the best campers for them, and I got that, and I was asked to come back and be a team captain. So that was really an honor for me. So I came back my second year, and I was working. Now, the director of the camp at that time was a fellow named Norm Claxton, who had been a Navy veteran who commanded a ship in World War II, and he was a high school principal, but he was also a blue and gold recruiting officer for the Naval Academy. And so he must have seen something in me he thought might work there. So he arranged to get their entrance exam flown up to, and he got it to the Nantucket High School. And I was on work party one day, and he said, "Come here, Chris, I want to have you to take this test." "What is it, Norm?" He says, "Well, it's a test for the Naval Academy. It's like an SAT test, just more math and science." So I went and I took the test, and time went by, and next thing you know, I got nominated to the Naval Academy through Norm. So this was my dream. My dream was now coming true. And on June 28th, 1967 was the day life changed for me, because that was the day I walked through the entrance to the Naval Academy at Annapolis, and as every other person of the 1,393 people that I started with, we all had our lives changed. Now, if anybody knows about plebe year at a service academy, any of the 3, Air Force, West Point, or Annapolis, it's a constant test, mentally and physically, emotionally, and the only people that you have to help you are your fellow classmates and company mates. They're trying to weed you out to see how many people won't get there. Now, my dad had said, "Chris, try it for 1 year. If you don't like it, just go through 1 year and you can leave." Well, what happens is when you're in a situation like that and you band together with your friends, you try to, they're not going to let the bastards get you down. You're going to beat them. You're going to do it. And we became impervious. They couldn't stop us. We made it through plebe year, and we were learning military, we were in the military, so the bulletin boards, the plebes would put all the pictures up of like all the tanks and the men marching. But then at the end of my plebe year, something happened that caught my attention. It was a fellow named Lieutenant William Calley had led a company of American soldiers into a village in Vietnam which had no men in it. It had old men who weren't combat men. It had women, and it had children and babies. And they tortured, raped, and killed every single person in that village. And it just shocked me. These are American forces, American servicemen are killing civilians? That's not what we're supposed to be doing. But I filed it away. I said, I didn't understand why that could have happened, but I was too busy trying to survive plebe year. This was not my fight. I was staying where I was. So we got through plebe year, we successfully made it, we climbed Herndon Monument, we took the cap off, put the officer's cap on it. That was an obelisk that's 23 feet high, and you have to get up there by holding on to each other, and we did it. At any rate, we moved into my upper class years. Now, I played sports at the Naval Academy, which allowed me to travel, and so we'd meet other people from other civilian colleges. So we got a chance to see what the other world was like. There's the 3 service academies, and there's everything else. And we were invited to fraternity parties when we'd be playing with them, and we got to know them. We felt very good about our relationship with them, and they were people just like us, just in a different way of life. On May 4th, 1970, which was the end of my junior year, I heard of a protest on the campus of Kent State, and we had just invaded Cambodia. There was uncertainty about why we were even doing that, but these college students, just like I had met when I was traveling with the teams, had protested. They called out the National Guard, and these National Guards came onto the campus, and they shot dead four undergraduate students and wounded 9 more. And I remember this picture of this girl leaning down toward one of her friends and looking up, can somebody help my friend? And this was an outrage to me. How can we be killing our own students over a war? So now here I am in the Naval Academy, preparing for a career in the military service, and I'm having these reactions, these visceral reactions to the things I'm seeing that the military is doing. So that was the conflict that was developing for me. But once again, I sublimated it because, I mean, it was too momentous for me to think about the fact that maybe it'll smooth out, maybe the war will end. So in my senior year, it's in the springtime, a priest that had a brother, an Irish Christian brother who had taught me in the Catholic high school, and I went into Times Square to see a movie called Tora, 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 which was a recreation of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. And it was as lifelike as it could be. We're sitting in the theater, myself and Brother Reedy, and halfway through the movie, I just got so overwhelmed with the death and destruction I saw on the screen, I just couldn't handle it. I got up and I walked out, and I walked into Times Square, and I was standing outside of Times Square when Brother Reedy came out after. He said, "Are you all right?" I said, "I am not all right. I'm in a military academy, and this is how I'm reacting to what I'm seeing that I'm preparing to do." So I went back to the academy. My graduation was coming. I had fulfilled all my commitments, and I didn't know whether I could sign the oath of office. Because in the oath of office, in the oath of office it says, "We well and faithfully discharge the duties of our office without mental reservation or purpose of evasion." Well, I had mental reservations about ordering people into war, into shooting somebody or asking somebody else to shoot somebody. And so there was a professor of mine, Lieutenant Broyles, who had just come back from Vietnam. He had gone to Yale. He had graduated. In those days, the draft was, everybody was drafted, and he had entered into an officer candidate school, and he was teaching an ethics class. And I said to him, "Lieutenant Broyles, I need to talk to you about something it's a problem in my life." And so I told him what it was. He said, "Come out to my place out in Annapolis." We went out, and he says, "Look, I was just at a Vietnam Veterans Against the War rally, and what you're telling me tells me that you're a conscientious objector." I said, "Well, what is that?" He said, "Well, if somebody's morally or religiously opposed, for religious reasons opposed to war in any form or specific wars, you can ask to have a classification of conscientious objector, which is a 1O. So it's like there's 1A, which you can go in, or 2S as a student, or 4F if you fail physically, and then you can take alternate forms of service. I had a 5 or 6 year service commitment facing, and I wanted to fulfill that. All my classmates and I that had been together, we were down under 900 kids now. From the 1393 we started, we were all getting ready for our careers, but I felt that I needed to tell the Navy that I wanted a career which I wasn't going to be asked to shoot somebody. I'm sorry, I was 17, I didn't even shave when I went to the Naval Academy, and this is how I had developed, and I felt that as the honorable thing to do, at which we had been taught, is to tell them how I felt. So I went back for the last week before I was to graduate. My parents had a house in Annapolis that rented for us. Here comes the oath of office. We get back, all of us have to sign the oath of office. And it was on my desk in my room. I looked at it, and it said, as I just described to you, I had the mental reservations, but I thought of, everything that I had done, all the hours and weeks and months and years with my classmates that I had prepared for this, and I was going to make a decision whether I was going to accept or decline my commission as a military officer. I would be an ensign. I was assigned to go to a minesweeper off the coast, the Gulf of Tonkin. What am I going to do? I remember Lieutenant Broyle's words. He said, there's a classification. So I sat and I looked at it, and I looked at it. And I thought of all my classmates and my friends who I loved, and we'd gotten each other through this. Now I'm on my own, but I couldn't sign it, so I declined. I picked it up and I took it to my company officer, Lieutenant Lawless. He took a look at it and he said, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm just trying to describe to you that I'm a conscientious objector. I understand there's a classification 1O that I'm allowed to do, and I'd like to explore that. He says, go to your room and stay in your room till further orders. I said, okay. I went to my room, and about an hour later, the door opened. Some military police were there. Rather than discussing, they took me into custody. They brought me down into the bowels of Bancroft Hall where they have a holding cell. And I said, what are you doing? I didn't do anything wrong. They brought my roommate, Tom Travis, down to be with me in this room until they could have an officer come in and talk to me. And then the officer, about 3 hours later, a lieutenant came in, and his job was to get me to sign a resignation. I didn't understand what was going on at the time, but it became clear as Tom and I, why was Tom in my room with me? Because he didn't want me talking to the press. It was June week, it was graduation week, and they couldn't have a midshipman who just went through 4 years of intensive training, and I had done very well. I was a dean's assistant, I played 2 sports, I was a class officer for 4 years, I was secretary of the honor board, and how could I come to this conclusion? But I felt it was honor bound to tell them that. They didn't want me going to the press. So the lieutenant comes into the room, and he sits down with me and says, look, this whole process is going to go a lot better from you if you would just resign from the academy. Here's the resignation papers. I said, would it allow me to have another billet? He said, well, yeah, you can be a photographer, you can go into the medical field. I said, okay, and I signed a resignation thinking that would be helpful to me. Well, the next morning at 8 o'clock, I was told I was to pack up my stuff in a box, and by 9 o'clock, I was standing outside of the Naval Academy 5 days before graduation, and all my friends were in there getting ready to go for the last parades and the dances and go to graduation, throw their hats in the air, and I was driving home to tell my parents that I wasn't going to graduate. At least I wasn't going to graduate with my class. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the Navy saying I was reinstated as a midshipman because I had done nothing wrong. I had exerted what I thought was my ability to do that. I wanted to talk with them. I wanted to serve. I just couldn't serve as I had seen in my time at the Naval Academy and as I described. And they said, you're going to have to make an application, you're going to file papers, and we're going to go to a hearing. I said, that's fine. I typed out my application, explained my reasoning, and at the hearing, I had 2 of my college professors, Brother Reedy, who was with me at Tora Tora, came and testified. My dad testified, my sister testified, and Tom Travis, who was with me, my roommate testified. The Navy had no one. They brought no one who could dispute my sincerity, and after we finished the hearing, 1 day later, I was denied. I was denied for no reason. They felt that I was not sincere, but there was no evidence to say that that was the case, and I was sincere. I got orders immediately to go to Anacostia Naval Station as an enlisted man, to work as an enlisted man for my service. And at that point, I realized I needed a lawyer. I had tried to do this all on my own. I was so naive. And I found a lawyer. We filed an application in the federal district court in Baltimore. The judge read the transcripts. The U.S. attorney was standing there. I was sitting over here, and the judge read everything, and he said to the U.S. attorney, do you have anything to say that should prevent me from giving this man his discharge? And as the U.S. attorney was saying, I do not, Your Honor, I said, wait a minute, I don't want a discharge. I want to serve my commitment. I just don't want to shoot anybody to serve the commitment. And my lawyer says this to me, he says, sit down and shut up. You're about to win this case. And so I sat down and shut up, but that was not how I felt. And so I walked out of the court. I got an honorable discharge, but at what cost? At what cost did I get that discharge? I didn't have an undergraduate degree. I never graduated from the college. My poor parents had moved to another town, ostensibly to be near her father, but I know why they moved. It was just too difficult. I was the first kid in my family ever to go to college. I was like the star of the family, and look at what I had done. It hurt them desperately, and I knew that it would. And there was shame involved in that. Certainly I felt some of it. What did I do? I picked the pieces up. I went back to school. I got a degree in law. I met a beautiful woman. But one thing I never was able to do was to reconnect with my classmates. And because we were so close, like brothers, we helped each other to survive, I really felt that was, I felt guilt for not being with them. And so 8 years after after I would have graduated, my wife Sarah said to me, let's go back down there. You've got to go down. I said, okay, we'll go. We walked through the academy, and there was no life in it for me because the people that I really cared about, my classmates, weren't there. We went out to the stadium where I should have been graduated, and it had iron bars. You could see through them to the field where I had played football, and where I would have thrown the cap in the air with them. And I just held onto the bars, and I just started to cry because that's where I thought I would have gone, and I didn't think that I didn't know how this had happened to me. We walked out, and I stayed away from my classmates, the people that I really cared for, until our 20th reunion, 20 years after this happened. And my best friend at the academy, Dave Bolduc, who was the quarterback on our team, said, he called me Farles. He said, Farles, Melody and I are going to go to the reunion. We want you to come to the 20th. I had never been back to the school. I didn't know how to do it. My wife, Sarah, said, we should do this. We should go back. You have to see. So the time came, and I went back down for our 20th reunion. And in this reunion, we had, the Friday night was we were going to the mess hall where we ate 1,000 meals. And so we'd have a reunion dinner in the mess hall with all my classmates and their partners. And the next day, we would go to the homecoming game. So we got to the mess hall. I was nervous. I hadn't seen my classmates in ages. I didn't know what they would think of my decision. And we walked in. Most of them were sitting down, and we were coming. Walked down and through the aisle, and we turned to go to our seats, and all of a sudden, from way over in the corner, I hear, Farles, is that you? And it's Danny Stewart from Sacramento, California, one of my close friends I haven't talked to in 20 years. And then over here, somebody says, Chris Farley's here? Farley's here. And people got up and came to me, and they hugged me and touched me. They missed me, and I missed them, and I missed being with them. And they validated everything that I had believed in because I didn't lose their care for me. And the next day, I went to the game, and I was sitting with Sarah here, and a fellow named Roger, who was he was a brigade boxing champion. He went into the Marine Corps. He was a Vietnam veteran. We're sitting next to each other, just making small talk, talking to watching the game. And all of a sudden, he says to me, "You know what you did took a lot of guts." And I looked at him. I said, "Thanks, Roger. That means the world to me," because I did believe in myself, but it meant so much to me when my classmates also believed and loved me too. Thank you. That's my story.
Chris Farley. I don't know if you could hear that, but that was not easy for him to do. Thank you, Chris. He has never told anybody that story and has carried that, so we salute you. Yeah. So Chris is not a title examiner. I just want to point that out. But he is a mediator by vocation, and he is Captain Scalapini by avocation. Now, he spent one season on a going scalloping. He said he was the most inexperienced and bewildered scalloper ever in the history of Nantucket. But what he does do is make nightlights from scallops. So you've probably seen those. We have one more storyteller, and I'd love to share these final ones with you, though, before she comes on. A memorable theater experience. This one right now because I'm one of the storytellers. Okay. We can guess who that is. When the school did all the interviews, We Are Nantucketers with Nancy Newhouse. That was a great theater experience. When my son played, was it Bernardo in West Side Story? Wow, that's a big one. My sister was Tom Hanks' personal assistant. Oh my God. I went to the premiere of Apollo 13 and sat with Tom Hanks, Bill Paxton, Kevin Bacon, the astronaut Jim Lovell. Wow. Ooh la la. You get up here and tell a story next time. One of our earliest experiences was dinner and a show with business associates and 7 guests, none of whom spoke any English. It was like going to a silent movie. I went to an off-Broadway show starring my brother with our family, and the star, he was great, but the subject matter was very, very difficult for the parents. I guess it was a difficult show. We're just going to leave it at that. And finally, the New York City Ballet, Balanchine choreographed Jewels and Ruby, Emerald, Diamond, 3 pieces that are so beautiful, sensual, heart-stopping, and has stayed with me forever, dazzling, as theater can be, right? Okay. Thank you all for participating. That was just wonderful. Okay, our final storyteller coming to the stage was asked about her first memory. When she was 11 years old, she read Moby Dick, and she was sure Nantucket was a fictional place. Later in her life, she came to Nantucket for the first time, and that very day, she went to the Whaling Museum, and the Dreamland was playing Moby Dick. Please welcome Sassy Nash.
Hello. I was ecstatically happy. Ever since the first time I went to see a theater performance as a credit requirement for my class, I was ecstatically happy, and I wanted to feel that over and over again. So I went to see as many shows as possible in many theaters in the central Arkansas area and even surrounding areas. I wanted to feel that way over and over again. One magical night, I was discovered, and I was invited to be part of the magic from the other side of the stage. And again, I was ecstatically happy. I was doing everything I could, from sweeping the floors, working the light booth, or working backstage. Stage management was my favorite job, and being backstage was my favorite place to be. Back there in the dark, blue light next to me, and watching the magic being performed from there. Outside of the theater, I was an educator. I was out of college, and even when I was in college, I was teaching different subjects in different settings, from ages newborn to college freshmen. But then my life in Arkansas, there was nothing else for me. It was not my place anymore, and I have to go out and look for my place. And following an opportunity, I moved to Massachusetts. And one weekend, I went to Cape Cod, and I asked for a sign for my place. And right across from the hostel, there was a sign, "Ferries to Nantucket this way." I knew then that Nantucket was my place, and a few summers later, I moved to Nantucket for my first summer, and I love it so much that I wanted to come back for a second summer. And that second summer, I want to stay for a winter. And I love Nantucket for its beauty and everything else, but what I love the most is that it has everything I want, including the theater, even as an audience member. But if I were to stay for the winter, I will have time to find my way to the backstage. I told a friend that I wanted to stay on Nantucket year-round, and he suggested that I apply for the public schools. They are always hiring. But I wasn't sure. So later that week, I came to the Dreamland. I was volunteering for actually the comedy festival. And as we were waiting for the patrons to arrive, I talked to a fellow volunteer who happened to be a teacher at the public school, and I told him what my friend had said, and he agreed with him. I should apply for a job at the public school. So that night, before I even arrived home, I had emailed the principal of the middle school, and by Monday, I had an interview with the principals of the intermediate school and the middle school. They went with a different candidate. So I went to the place that makes me happy, and as I was waiting for the theater show to begin, I was sitting eating the best popcorn and checking my email on my phone, and I got an email from the principal of the intermediate school inviting me for a second interview. And I watched that show ecstatically happy with the hope that I will stay on Nantucket for that winter. I got a part-time job as a Spanish teacher at the intermediate school. I was gonna stay on Nantucket for the winter, and soon after, I found housing in a room at the teacher's house. One thing more to do, find my way backstage, but I had time. Teaching, especially your first year as a teacher, is very challenging and very tiring. But I love teaching, and I love working with children. And one weekend on December, the Dreamland was doing a show, and indeed, I wanted to go see it. But it was Friday night, and I was really, really tired. And then my landlady was hosting a party for a few of her friends, and I didn't want to intrude. And staying in my room would have been too weird. And indeed, I had somewhere I wanted to go, and I could find my own entertainment in town. So I went to town, still not sure if I was gonna go see the show that night, so I didn't purchase my ticket ahead of time. So I come to the Dreamland, and I ask if I can buy a ticket. Their credit card machine is not working. And the show is not at the Dreamland building, it's somewhere else on Main Street. And I don't have no idea where that building is, so I'm just gonna walk around Main Street. If I find it, I'll go see the show. If not, I'll keep walking and then go home. I find it. And I go upstairs, and right outside the door where the stage will be, there's two ladies standing there, and I ask them if I can buy a ticket. They say yes, but it will have to be the old-fashioned way when they take your credit card information and then charge you later. Like, that's fine. So they ask me for my zip code, and I give her a number that starts with a 7 instead of a 0. So she asks me, where are you from? And I say, I live on Nantucket, but I used to live in Arkansas. So she starts singing, Arkansas, Arkansas, I just love all Arkansas. And I sing along with her. Love my ma, love my pa, I just love all Arkansas. Stop it, she says. How do you know that song? That song is from the musical Big River, the story of Huckleberry Finn. And a few summers ago, I had worked that show at the Arkansas Shakespeare Theater. I was Jim's spotlight, I told her. And then she asked, are you a theater person? So I pull my long sleeve and my watch, and I show her the tattoo on my wrist, which is comedy and drama with the vital sign next to it. And I say to her, is this theater enough for you? She looks at the lady standing next to her and says, are you seeing this? She nods. Then she asks me, what are you doing? Are you doing anything theater? I'm like, no, but I really want to. And I'm looking for a stage manager. Can you stage manage? I'm like, actually, yes. And then she says, this show is with children. Can you work with children? I'm a teacher. That was the night I met Laura Gallagher Byrne. And I got a job, oh, thank you, oh my God. And I got a job as an assistant stage manager for the winter show. And after school that winter, I will run to town to work backstage with the children. On the opening night of Peter Pan, the curtains were closed, and I was holding onto the ropes of the curtain. And once they're open, that will be the beginning of the show. So I was there backstage in the dark, blue light next to me, holding onto the ropes, waiting for the go on my headset. Laura was finishing her pre-show speech, and I felt it. I felt statically happy. But more than before, more than in Arkansas, because after the show, I was in my place. And at that moment, I was backstage. And even today that I get to call the show from the booth, I still remember that moment, backstage in the dark, blue light next to me, holding onto the ropes and thinking, this must be a dreamland. Thank you.
Sassy Nash, what a way to end our show. What a beautiful way to end our show. Sassy came to this country from Mexico, not Arkansas. And aren't we lucky that she's the education coordinator here? Thank you. Can we get one more round of applause for all of our wonderful storytellers? Happy 10th birthday to the Dreamland, and thank you all for coming. Good night.
The day for the rest of my life. I get hold on to the memory